time to join us this evening. My name is Nancy Johnson, and I am a regional representative out of the Sudbury office. And joining me this evening is my co-moderator, Morgan Oddie, who's the regional representative out of Kingston. Joining us as well in the background is Kelly Loshak, our amazing administrative assistant, also out of the Kingston office. She has been instrumental in doing a fantastic job to ensure that tonight's webinar runs smoothly. Thank you so much, Kelly. Okay. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and you have all automatically been muted. This is to allow you to clearly hear the presenters and avoid disruptions from background noise. To ask questions, you can click on the Q&A window, allowing you to ask questions to the host and to the panelists. We can either reply back to you via live text in the Q&A window, or we can answer your question live. So to ask a question, you can type the question into the Q&A box. Please note that we will be monitoring the Q&A throughout the presentation, and we will respond at the designated Q&A section at the end. If your question is specific to an individual situation, we will let you know that we will follow up with you after the webinar. Questions are general in nature that can benefit all the participants will be read aloud and answered. We will also group similar questions together to avoid any repetition. Now I will switch over to my co-moderator, Morgan Oddie.
Thank you, Nancy. So I'm just going to give a brief land acknowledgement and statement of solidarity. So due to the virtual nature of education and webinars that we're currently experiencing, the land that I'm acknowledging isn't necessarily the land that you yourself are on. So I'm coming from Cataraqui or Kingston, which is the traditional territories of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe people. So these folks were the original resistors, stewards, caretakers of the land, and them, along with many other Indigenous nations and Métis folks, still currently reside in Cataraqui, Kingston, Ontario. And if you don't already know the history of the land that you currently reside on, I encourage you to seek that out as a small but meaningful gesture at reconciliation. I'll send it back to Nancy to read our statement on harassment.
Miigwech, Morgan, for your statement. Our union is made strong by working together to improve our working lives and to preserve the rights that we have struggled to achieve. Mutual respect is the cornerstone of this cooperation. The PSCC Constitution states that every member is entitled to be free from discrimination and harassment, both in the union and at the workplace, on the basis of age, sex, color, national or ethnic origin, race, religion, marital status, family status, criminal record, disability, sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, language, social and economic class, or political belief. Members are also entitled to be free from personal harassment. If you experience harassment at this event, contact the identified anti-harassment resource person to discuss the situation and possible responses. Our initial approach is to encourage early and informal resolution and to facilitate our members speaking directly with one another to resolve the matter. If this is not successful or possible, the constitutional and policy mandates on the issue of harassment will be fully and quickly enforced. Harassment in all its forms detracts from our common purpose and weakens our union. Let each one of us, as we work together on the important task at hand, treat each other with dignity and respect. So for this evening, your anti-harassment resource persons are myself, Nancy Johnson, and Morgan Oddie, and we can be reached at johnson@psac.ca. afpc.com, and Oddie, ODDIEM, at psac-afpc.com. Thank you.
All right, so thanks so much, Nancy, for reading that. So I'm just going to pull up James, our central speaker for the Federal Disability Insurance webinar this evening. If you want to start getting your screen sharing, I will introduce you.
Okay, excellent.
So James is currently the National Pensions and Disability Insurance Officer for the Public Service Alliance of Canada, a position that he's held for the last 28 years. Previously, he was a local activist with the Canadian Union of Postal Workers, CUPW, for 15 years. He was a former member of the PSAC national component for 9 years. He's held research officer positions with the Canadian Labour Congress and the Canadian Union of Public Employees. He's a PSAC representative to the Canadian Capital Stewardship Network. He holds certification for public service pension plan retirement planning from Public Works and Government Services Canada. He also holds an honors BA in economics and political science from the University of Waterloo and a master's degree in public administration from Carleton University. So join me in welcoming James, our resident disability insurance expert, who will be giving his presentation. And as Nancy indicated, you're welcome to ask questions through the Q&A box throughout his presentation, but he will be answering live questions at the end of it. So we'll have the question and answer period at the end. So thanks so much, James. Over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Sister Morgan. Can everybody hear me clearly?
Yep, you're all good, James.
Okay, great. And can everybody see the slide, the presentation, PowerPoint presentation?
Yep, also all good.
Okay, great. Well, again, thank you, Sister Morgan, for introducing me. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending this seminar this evening. I'm doing the presentation from Ottawa, the unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe. I'll be giving this presentation over the next, hopefully, 45 minutes to an hour. I've given this presentation many times previously. And like I say, hopefully there'll be lots of questions at the end of the session, and I'd like nothing more than to address those questions. So what we're going to deal with today, and we have an agenda outline, is first of all, we're going to be talking about some of the disability trends in the federal public service to give you a bit of a background on what's happening in the federal public service in terms of disability insurance and disability claims. We're then going to be talking about some of the important features of the federal disability plan. What are some of the definitions of total disability? What is an elimination period? Other issues that is important to know if you're a representative or if you're a member and you're thinking of applying for disability benefits, or a member is thinking of applying for federal disability benefits. We'll then talk about the procedure for filing a disability claim. There's some websites and some tools available to members who find themselves disabled and are going to have to be taking some time off and going on disability insurance. And we'll talk about the process for filing a claim. Then we'll talk about, mainly directed to union representatives out there, or even members who may be requested by one of their colleagues at work, about how you can assist a member in filing a claim. And then we're going to go to some websites to show you some tools and further assistance and information that will assist you when a member that you know or you're representing wants to file a claim for disability insurance. Then we're going to talk about a couple of recent developments that I think they're important for the membership to know, and they're important particularly in the area of disability insurance. We're going to be talking about the Tallis decision from the Ontario Human Rights Tribunal, a 2018 decision, and just recently, last year, a Supreme Court of Canada decision in Fraser. And those potentially decisions could have some significant implications for the PSAC membership, and in particular, people who are filing disability claims and who perhaps become totally disabled. Then last but not least, we're going to go to the question and answer session. Again, I'm hoping to get through this as quickly as possible. And then, like I say, there's nothing more than I enjoy in interacting with the membership and answering their questions around the disability insurance plan. So that's what we're going to do today, this evening, and we'll proceed right to that. So in terms of trends, what I've shown, what you see on the slide is it's a graph of the disability claims that have been filed over a 27-year period from 1992 all the way up to 2019. Now you can see disability claims that are filed go up and down in any year, and there are many reasons for that. Actually, one thing to note is in 2019, there were 4,020 claims. That's the highest number of claims that were ever filed in the under the Federal Public Service Disability Plan. And that was in 2019. But again, this slide really doesn't tell you much. What is really important is the incident rate, the number of claims filed per 1,000 plan members. And again, so what I've done here is I've, again, over the same 27-year period, I have taken the plan membership, I've taken the number of claims notified, and then I've taken the incidence of the claims per 1,000 over that 27-year period. And if you can see over the last several years, that incident rate has increased. You can see over here during the beginning of that 27-year period, it was around 12, 6, 13, 1, around that 12, 13, 11 range. But you can see towards the end, towards the last 7 years, it's always been about 17 or 16 percentage odds, and that's fairly significant. That's a fairly significant increase. If you plot that on a chart, you see that over that period of time, there's been a gradual increase in the incidence of disability claims filed in the Federal Public Service. And if you draw a trend line through that, you can see that the disability trends have, again, a gradually increase over that 27-year period. So that's one of the first trends we see. There's an increasing incidence of federal disability claims filed in the Federal Public Service. Another trend that's important to note is the number of claims that involve mental health conditions. So again, what I've done is I've taken the same 27-year period, I've taken the number of approved claims, I've taken the number of those approved claims that involve mental health conditions, and then we've taken the percentage. And again, if you go over the 27-year period, you can see towards the last 5 years, that percentage is increased in comparison to what it was early in the period, when it was about 26%, about 1 over every 4 claims filed involved a mental health condition, and it goes up to about 1/3. But what you see in the last 5 years is that percentage is increased to 49, and now, of course, in 2019, 54%. More than 1 out of every 2 claims filed in the Federal Public Service involves a mental health condition. And you have to remember, under the disability insurance plan, these are approved claims that have been approved by the insurer. The claimant has provided additional sufficient medical evidence to approve a mental health condition. And we're not talking about, these individual sick days. We're not talking about a day after the Super Bowl. In order to even get on this list, and we'll talk about that later, you have to be absent a consecutive period of 13 weeks or the expiry of your sick leave credits to even be eligible to have a claim approved. So these are people who've been off for a minimum of 13 weeks, consecutive weeks, or for the minimum of their expired sick leave credits, whichever is greater, and it's because of a mental health condition. So that's what that chart tells you. Now, again, you plot this on a chart and you can see the gradual increase. Again, we talked about 20, 25% around that period of time, up until 2019, 54%. Again, you draw a trend line through that, and you can see, again, a gradual increase over that period of time. And now, as of the last 2 years, we're now starting to track above the trend line. So that's the second trend that we've seen over this extended period of time, 27 years, an increasing percentage of claims that involve mental health conditions. We just saw an increasing incidence of disability claims filed in the Federal Public Service. And now this trend indicates an increasing percentage of the claims approved involve a mental health condition. And this pie chart also gives you a bit more detail on the type of mental health claims that are filed. And like, again, it's a pie chart, and you can see the legend here about the different types of mental health conditions that claimants are approved for 2019 under the Federal Public Service Plan. Now, one thing you can notice, if you just look at this part of the pie chart, that part there, over 3/4 of the mental health conditions involve either depression and/or anxiety. Now, of course, that's a serious situation. I mean, again, the number of claims approved, a high percentage of them involve depression and/or anxiety. But the other side of that is those are mental health conditions that are amenable to treatment, very amenable to treatment. So there is a bit of a silver lining in that. But like I say, at least 3/4 of the mental health conditions involve depression and/or anxiety. Okay, so that's one of the second trends. Then last but not least, we took a look at the claims experienced by gender. And there's a lot of numbers on this chart, so I'll go through it. First of all, same 27-year period, same number of approved claims. We divided approved claims by number, by men and women of this approved claims. We separated by men and women. We take the percentage of the women that have been approved for a disability claim under the Federal Public Service, the percentage of women, and then we compare that to the percentage of women in the Federal Public Service. So it's a gap analysis. If some of you are familiar with equity representation analysis in the Federal Public Service, you take the difference between the equity group representation of the population at large in comparison with the equity representation of the Federal Public Service, and you get the gap. So I've done exactly the same here, but I've talked about the gender composition of approved disability claims, and we get the gap. And so the gap is in the far right-hand column. And what you can see two things. First of all, one is maybe so obvious you don't even notice it. It's always positive. There's percentage of women that file claims in the Federal Public Service are always in excess of the percentage that they make up of the Federal Public Service. You see that this number in the far right-hand column is always positive. But what you also notice is that the claim, that the gap has been increasing over a period of time. And then you start in the initial period of the 27 years, you can see single digits of gaps, and then 10, single digits again, 10, 10. But then as you move down towards the mid-year period, about 5 years ago, you can see it really increased at that particular time to a height of about 16, a gap of 16 and 15. But then we've seen over the last few years that gap has started to increase. And so that's a positive sign, and it's probably a reflection of initiatives or policies that have been directed at assisting women in their participation in the Federal Public Service. And that in fact, perhaps has a positive impact on the percentage of claims that the disability claims that they filed. So that's what we've seen. We've seen but it's still higher than it was at the initial 27-year period. But like I say, it is declining. So that's a bit of a positive sign. So, and then just I've used a bar chart to reflect these trends, and you can see the black bars are a reflection of the women and their percentage of claims filed, approved. The rose bar indicates the percentage of women in the Federal Public Service. And then, like I say, the gap is the white bar. You can see it was trending upwards up until about 5 years ago, and now it's starting to trend downwards. So basically what we've seen in the Federal Public Service over the last quarter century and more, about 27 years, is we've seen an increasing incidence of disability claims filed in the Federal Public Service. We've seen an increasing percentage of those claims that involve mental health conditions. and we've seen an increasing proportion of those claims that are filed by women. But that is improving over the latter years. But like I say, it's still much higher than it was, say, 27 years ago. Okay, so those are basically the trends we've seen up until 2019. Now, like I say, you note that the data also it goes up to 2019. That's the data that's currently available from Sun Life Financial regarding disability claims. But we do have some information regarding what transpired in 2000. And this is somewhat interesting, and I thought I'd just spend a bit of time on that. Again, we saw in 2019, 4,020 claims filed. That's the highest number of claims filed in the federal public service, ever in the federal public service during the life of the disability insurance plan, which was initiated in 1970. Now, if you take a trend over the last 5-6 years, excluding what happened with Phoenix, you have to ignore that. What happened with Phoenix is that many disability claims got caught in the Phoenix system and they were never processed. They were never administered in 2016. That's why you see that drop in 2016. So like I say, you draw a trend line that through to try to even that out. And then after 2019, if you continue that trend line, you figure the amount of claims filed would end up around here for 2020. But actually what you see is an actual drop. We know that the number of claims filed in 2000 is 3,421. That's a 15% drop in the number of claims filed since 2019. That's fairly significant. And like I say, we don't have any more data regarding that. So like I say, that's something that we're going to keep our eye on. Once we get additional information from the insurer, we might have a better understanding. I have some, there's some theories about why that happened in 2020. And I believe many of you could probably think of some of them. But like I say, for 2020, we've seen a 15% drop, and that's significant since 2019. And again, we'll see what's behind that drop and whether that continues into 2021. Okay, so that's what's happening in terms of disability insurance trends in the federal public service. So I thought I would share that information with you to give you sort of a backdrop on that. Something else I want to just bring to your attention, and this illustrates the adjudication process administered by Sun Life Financial in terms of the administration and adjudication of federal disability claims. In 2012, what the insurer did was they implemented what they called a quality assurance program. And basically what that meant is that every disability claim, whether denied or approved, was given a second look. They're given a quality assurance review. And that was initiated in 2012. Now, again, the insurer is the administrator of the plan. Sun Life Financial is the administrator of the plan. They initiated this exercise in implementing quality assurance. And sure enough, what do you notice? That as soon as they implemented that quality assurance program in 2012 from the previous years, what you see, of course, is an increase, and the number of claims declined under the quality assurance program. Now, we haven't been given data on this since 2017, but you can see, it's quite obvious anyways to the PSAC anyways, that the implementation of this quality assurance made the adjudication procedure more stringent. And it resulted in an increasing percentage of claims being denied under the federal disability insurance plan. So I just thought I would bring that to your attention as well. That just complicates the things for people who are filing disability claims. Now, when you're the largest employer in the country and you have a significant concentration of your members in the National Capital Region, these trends are bound to attract media attention. So all I'm going to do is, you'll see over the next couple slides is some of the media coverage about some of the trends that we saw over the time period we talked about. Now, here is an article from 2007. It talks about, again, what did we see in the trends? An increasing percentage of disability claims that involve mental health conditions. Again, somewhat the similar issue covered by the press about disability claims increasing and the incidence of disability claims increasing in the federal public service. Now, this is somewhat interesting. It was an article from the Ottawa Citizen in 2008, Public Sector, a Toxic Place to Work. But what's most interesting about it is not what the article says, it's about who's saying it. And who's saying it is not the president of the PSAC. It's not a left-wing public policy group. It's actually Bill Wilkerson. He's a businessman. He's the chairperson of the Global Business and Economic Roundtable on Addiction and Mental Health. He's a businessman. He's a business person, and he knows the implications of having a high percentage of mental health claims in a workplace. And when he sees the data from what's happening in the federal public service, he can only come to one conclusion, that the public sector is in fact a toxic place to work. That's his words, and that's what the media reported on. And then just more, again, 2008, at the time, President John Gordon saying, and of course, in 2008 was the worst year yet as of 2008. But as you saw in the trends that I just showed you, the situation got even worse, even deteriorated after that. Then again, depression in the public service and mental health crisis. And again, this is Bill Wilkerson making a pronouncement on what he sees happening in the federal public service. Again, the depression capital of Canada, lots of federal public service employees concentrated in the National Capital Region. Obviously, a lot of those disability claims are going to be in the National Capital Region. Again, it's just an analysis that, in fact, Ottawa putting that those trends, that in fact Ottawa could be considered the depression capital of Canada. And then again, more information on mental health, mental illness claims in the federal public service. And again, this was a downsizing period during the Harper administration, how the layoff anxiety accentuated these sort of trends in the federal public service. And then again, one last one, stress levels in the public service coming to fore. And this article, as some of you in the National Capital Region know about it, it was about a sad case of a member, not a member of the PSAC, but a member of another bargaining unit who committed suicide. He was one of these type A personalities. He got his surplus letter. He was under a lot of stress. He was filing a claim for disability insurance, and he ended up taking his own life, and it was brought right to the fore to the Treasury Board Minister at the time, Tony Clement. So even recalcitrant government, like the Harper government, with these trends, has to decide that they're going to try and address this issue because it's gotten out of hand. And so here's another article. It was published in 2010, indicating that the government was going to move on this disability crisis. And what they were doing is they're going to initiate what they called a disability management initiative. And again, it was Treasury Board. It started with Treasury Board collecting information on various issues that they identified as contributing to some of the disability trends that we just saw in the data that we just showed in the first few slides. And I'm not going to go through any detail about them. You can see some of them are articulated here, but it's just a number of trends that they identified and reported on as possible contributors to the disability trends that we were witnessing, and they were witnessing at that time in the federal public service. Well, the Disability Management Initiative invited the cooperation of the federal public service bargaining agents, including the PSAC, and we did participate in the process. And what the bargaining agents did at this time was they decided to put together a set of priority areas in terms of issues that the bargaining agents wanted to address in order to try and get a handle on the disability insurance quagmire in the federal public service. And again, I'm not going to go into any detail on them. You can see we identified 6. They're not prioritized in any way. And so again, these are areas that the bargaining agents identified as important to understand and address in terms of addressing some of the disability claim trends that we just talked about during the first few slides. Now, what this process ultimately ended up in, and you may have recalled in a previous round of collective bargaining, the Treasury Board and the PSAC agreed to a memorandum of agreement to establish a joint task force on mental health, and that was Appendix M of the Treasury Board Collective Agreement. So that was one of the end results of the Disability Management Initiative. You may have recalled that during that particular round of negotiations. So you can see there was a mental health task force, a joint task force put together that the parties agreed to. They released an initial report. You see former National President Robin Benson with former Treasury Board President Scott Bryson with the initial report. They again met again and they released a second report on mental health. And again, you might recognize Sister Benson, former agriculture president, other PSAC staff members, Denise St. Jean, other participants from other bargaining agents and employer representatives who were participating at that time in the joint task force on mental health. Bob Kingston from the Agriculture Union as well. And so what that culminated in is the establishment of what is now in place called it's not jointly management, but it's jointly there's a joint cooperation in terms of what they call a Center for Expertise in Mental Health in the Workplace. They've actually set up this center. You'll see a link, and I'm not going to go on the link, but if you go to that link, it has many tools that are published and put together by the Center of Expertise that are of assistance in terms of addressing mental health in the workplace. So if that's an issue in your workplace and you're interested in this area, this is some place you can go to get additional information, additional tools to understand and perhaps assist with addressing mental health issues in your workplace. So that was one of the culminations of the Disability Management Initiative, the establishment of this Center of Expertise, and it's operating now. Again, if you're interested, I invite you to visit the website and see some of the information that's there regarding that. Okay, so that's sort of the trends, what happened after that, the Disability Management Initiative, and ending up with the task force on joint task force on mental health, and ultimately the establishment of a Center of Expertise on mental health in the workplace. Now, just a couple facts. We'll go into the federal disability policy, and it's known as Group Policy number 12500. It's a policy between Treasury Board of Canada and Sun Life Financial. Bargaining agents do not have a position to negotiate terms of the federal disability policy. It's completely outside the bargaining process. The policy that you see, and I believe we're going to make arrangements to have an actual copy of the policy distributed to each of the members who are participating in this webinar. It was first negotiated in 1970. So 1970 is over 50 years ago. And the plan has never been put to public tender. And in fact, it's never been reviewed or amended substantially over the last 50 years. Now, when was the last time you knew something that didn't change in any substantive fashion over 50 years? But when you take a look at that federal disability policy, it's crafted in archaic language, and it looks like it was written 50 years ago, but that's what governs the federal disability policy. There have been amendments, there have been updates, I'll admit that, but by and large, the bulk of the disability insurance plan has remained unchanged since 1970, and the plan has never been put to public tender. Now, it is a federal disability insurance plan that covers the Federal Public Service of Canada. The Federal Public Service of Canada is the largest employer. The government of Canada is the largest employer in the country. And so naturally, the long-term disability insurance plan is the largest disability insurance plan in the country, covers about 248,000 lives. And it applies to represented employees in the Federal Public Service. There's another plan for executives and managerial exclusions in the Federal Public Service. That's called the Public Service Management Insurance Plan. And that's for, again, for executives and managerial and confidential exclusions. So the majority, almost 95%, 97% of our members are covered under the represented plan. There is a situation where there can be members who were previously Excluded or confidential employees, they transition to being represented, and they have the option of keeping their coverage under the Public Service Management Insurance Plan, and that's administered by Industrial Alliance. So we have a small percentage of members who are also covered by the Public Service Management Insurance Plan. But then again, like I say, 96, 97, 98% of the membership is covered by the Sun Life Plan, the Disability Insurance Plan. As well, it applies to non-work related illnesses and injuries. Okay, so that's non-work related illnesses and injuries. If you're suffering or if you incur a work-related illness or injury, you have the workers' compensation, the Workplace Safety Insurance Board system in Ontario. And so that's where a member should go if they're incurring a work-related injury or illness. So we have the Workplace Safety and Insurance Board for work-related disabilities, injuries and illnesses, and we have the Federal Disability Insurance Plan for non-work related illnesses and injuries. So basically, some of the important provisions of the disability policy is if your claim is approved, Sun Life Financial will provide you with 70%, the Federal Disability Insurance Plan will provide you with 70% of your pre-disability insurable earnings. Now, because the federal government contributes a portion to the cost of the disability insurance plan, those benefits are taxable. So if you're in receipt of disability insurance benefits, that 70% of pre-disability insurable earnings is indexed January 1st of each year by 100% of the rate of inflation to a maximum of 3% per year. And again, if you remain totally disabled, when you start collecting benefits and remain throughout totally disabled, those benefits are payable until age 65. And then once you reach age 65, those disability insurance benefits end. That's right in the policy. And so there's no question. There's no dispute about that. That's when disability insurance ends, age 65. Of course, they end if you recover from your disability. But at the latest, if you remain totally disabled, the benefits remain payable until age 65. Now, federal disability benefits aren't paid the day you start, this day you stop working and become totally disabled. You have to serve what they call an elimination period. And the elimination period is defined in the federal disability policy as 13 weeks, 13 continuous weeks, or the expiry of your sick leave credits, whichever is later. So anybody who's going to file a disability claim has to wait for at least 13 periods, a 13-week period, or the expiry of your sick leave credits. Now, if you don't have sick leave credits, sufficient sick leave credits to cover that 13 weeks, there is a provision under the Employment Insurance Act called Employment Insurance Sickness Benefits that will pay you a percentage of earnings for up to 15 weeks to bridge that gap. So there is a public program available through Service Canada, where if you don't have a sufficient sick leave credits to carry you through the elimination period, the 13-week elimination period, there is a public program to bridge that gap. And it's called Employment Insurance Sickness Benefits. So that's an important thing to understand and to realize that disability benefits aren't payable automatically. Like sick leave, if you're off a day, you get paid sick leave credits. Under disability insurance plan, you have to wait a minimum of 13 weeks to expire your sick leave credits. And that's referred to in the policy as the elimination period. Now, in order to qualify for disability benefits, a claimant has to provide Sun Life Financial with sufficient medical documentation or medical evidence that substantiates that they're totally disabled. And totally disabled has a definition under the federal disability policy, and I've printed it there and it shows up on the slide. And again, we'll just go through a bit. Totally disabled, an employee is totally disabled if he or she is in continuous state of incapacity due to illness, which while continues during the elimination period and the following 24 months, prevents the employee from performing each and every duty of his or her regular occupation or employment. So during the initial 24-month period, if you're incapable and you provide medical evidence to the effect that you cannot perform each and every duty of your regular occupation or employment, and the medical evidence is sufficient, you will be approved by Sun Life Financial for federal disability benefits. That's the way the policy works for the first 24 months. Then, after the initial 24 months, the requirements or the criteria to qualify for federal disability benefits becomes more stringent. And as the policy states, while it continues thereafter, meaning after the initial 24 months, you're only qualified for disability benefits if it prevents the employee from engaging in any commensurate occupation for which he or she is or becomes reasonably qualified by education, training, experience. And commensurate occupation is further defined as any occupation in which the current salary or current rate of pay is not less than 66 2/3 of the current salary of the employee's own occupation. So you can see after 24 months, the criteria or the definition of total disability becomes more stringent, and you have to meet a more stringent criteria. And it's not your own occupation anymore, it's any occupation. And any occupation commensurate with your education, training, experience, which would pay you 66 2/3 of your regular salary. So in many cases, we see members who qualify. Sun Life, approves the claim, has no problem. The member qualifies for disability benefits for the initial 2-year period. However, even though their medical condition does not change at all after that 24-month period, they're no longer eligible for disability benefits. Why are they no longer eligible? Because Sun Life indicates that the medical evidence indicates that they could perform a commensurate occupation. They can't perform their own occupation. Sun Life will admit to that. No, we know you can't perform your own occupation, but that doesn't matter. After 24 months, the criteria now is commensurate occupation. And that's the criteria you have to meet. So many members, they receive benefits for an initial 2-year period, no problem at all. But once they hit that 2-year plateau, all of a sudden their disability benefits are discontinued. And the reason is they can't meet this more stringent criteria post 24 months of commensurate occupation. So many members have their claims denied after reaching that 24-month period. And so that explains why. Disability benefits, if you're approved and you remain totally disabled, as I said previously in the previous slide, they're payable until age 65, but you have to meet the criteria. So many members no longer qualify after 2 years. And there's like an issue out there, an impression that disability benefits are only payable for a 2-year period. And that's not true. If you meet the commensurate definition, then in fact, disability benefits will continue until your age, and you continue to meet that totally disabled criteria, will continue until age 65. So that's the definition of totally disabled. And I thought it was important to concentrate on that to give people a better understanding of what totally disabled means and what is needed to qualify for federal disability benefits. Okay, so those are some of the important features of the federal disability insurance plan. And I thought those were important for you to understand. They're probably the most important features of the disability insurance plan. There are many others, and we can address many of the other issues that you may have during the question and answer session. But I thought those would be ones that I would highlight for the purposes of this brief presentation. Now, in terms of the disability insurance application, you'll see here a landing page on the Treasury Board Secretariat Pension and Benefits website that indicates that, in fact, recently in 2009, the entire disability insurance application process was changed. They've changed the forms, they've changed the process. And so that was important to know. There's indications of where you're being directed to in terms of website landing to get information if you want to now file a disability claim. And so the next landing page is here. You can see it's a welcome to the Federal Disability Insurance website. It's a Sun Life Financial website. You see the web link. And so I'm going to go to the web link and see if I can illustrate some of the aspects of the disability claim process. And hopefully this works. So Okay, so that's not it. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna try and go right to the link. I was trying another avenue. Okay, there it is. Can everybody see the landing page? Someone's got to come back to me. Can you see
No,
the
James, we can't see the
Okay.
landing page.
Okay. Okay, great. And it's working. Okay.
No, we can't see it.
Circles never cease. Okay. Okay, so this is the landing page. And you can, and like I say, that was the first thing. First thing you'll see when you go to that website link. And then if you go through the website, you'll see that there's an initial claim package. And the initial claim package includes information, and including an employee guide, and includes all the information in a guide that would assist a member in preparing and filing their disability claim. Now, the disability claim is comprised of four portions actually, although two of them are combined. First of all, there's the employee statement, and it's all information regarding the medical condition in the employee's perspective, and some background information on the employee. Then there's an employer's portion, which is comprised of two portions. First, there's the immediate manager's or supervisor's statement that attests to the member's responsibilities and their current situation and their workload and performance. That's supposed to be completed by the member's immediate manager and supervisor.
Sorry, James.
Yes.
I apologize for interrupting. We're just getting some feedback, and also on our end, we're actually not seeing the page that you pulled up. We're still
Okay.
looking at the PowerPoint slide.
Okay, just the initial landing page?
We're not seeing the landing page at all. We're just seeing the PowerPoint slide.
Okay. Okay. Okay, that's not what I wanted. Okay, right here. This is what I want. Okay,
Yep,
can
there you
now?
go. Perfect.
Yeah, that's what the screen sharing works for. Okay. Practice that. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, let's start over. So again, you're at the initial landing page, and then you can see some of the documentation that's available is an employee claim guide that provides information and instructions to the employee on how to submit the claim, a step-by-step instruction guide. And like I say, those are downloadable, or you can view them on the website directly. And then the disability claim package is comprised of four forms. First of all, there's the employee statement. And again, that's from the employee's perspective, gives some background information on their medical history, and that's again provided by the employee. Then there's an employer's portion, and it's comprised of two components. First of all, there's a component by the immediate manager. And again, that's downloadable. You can take a look at it, but that's to be completed by the immediate manager or the supervisor of the claimant. And then there's a compensation advisor statement. Now that's usually now at this particular point by the Public Service Pay Center. That gives information on your employment status, your insured salary, any allowances that may be considered as insurable earnings, and other issues, tax exemptions, because of course, as I said, disability benefits are taxable, and they're going to apply withholding tax on benefits if they're paid. Now, then there's an attending physician statement. Now, what they did differently as well in 2019 is they've made an options. If in fact you have a disability that's musculoskeletal related, you may want to just concentrate on submitting a physician's questionnaire or statement based on that, and why go into some of the other details that may not be pertinent to a musculoskeletal disability. They've also put a separate disability questionnaire for mental health related questions. If in fact it's a mental health related question that you're certain is what you're applying for disability for, then why go into different aspects of your health that aren't related to your mental health condition? And so they've streamlined the process, or at least tried to streamline the process, and put now together a mental health questionnaire for physicians. And then of course, there's the general questionnaire If all else fails, if you're not clear, if there may be a hybrid situation or some sort of co-determination between different disabilities, then in fact, you may just want to submit the general physician's questionnaire and let the insurer take a look at it and make a determination about your entitlement to disability benefits. And then, of course, there's the disability policy, Group 1200G, which you can also download from that website. So that's basically the disability insurance application. This is a site that members should be directed to if, in fact, they're considering filing a disability claim. Okay, so that's what I just wanted to stress and provide importance and tried some information with respect to that. Okay, so hopefully that's of some assistance. Okay, now I'll try and go back to the website, to the presentation. Okay, now you're seeing, okay.
Yeah, you're good, James.
Okay, good. Okay, good. I'm getting the hang of this. Okay. So what if a member comes up to you, if you're a representative, a member comes up to you and says, what am I going to do? I need assistance with respect to filing a disability claim. And other than referring them to that website, they still might require assistance. Maybe just filing a claim, and not all the claims are approved by Sun Life Financial, but appealing a Sun Life decision. Well, one of the tools we have, first of all, again, I'm not going to go to this web link, is the web link on the PSAC National website. That has many tools available to union representatives to assist members who are considering filing a disability claim, who have had their disability claim denied by Sun Life Financial and are considering filing an appeal. And so some of those tools are, again, the disability policy, the statement of the procedures for filing a disability claim. We also have a special tool. It's called an attending physician statement guidelines, which the PSAC has put together. And what these guidelines do is if a member's claim is denied and they have to file an appeal, well, basically all the appeal is submitting additional medical information. So in that particular case, often the problem is the reports that are being provided by the attending physician. Throughout my entire history in the federal disability insurance plan, that's the number one problem, is the type of information that medical professionals provide to Sun Life Financial that's not adequate. The member may be clearly totally disabled, but if the attending physician or attending specialist isn't communicating that to the insurer, the claim's not going to be approved. And so that's important. So these guidelines spell it out to the attending physician or the attending specialist. This is what you've got to say to get a claim approved. And again, you'll find a template of that document on that web link that you see on this page. So that's something I thought I would direct members' attention to. And then, of course, you see there's the handbook that the PSAC has put together for all disability insurance plans. An electronic copy is available on the website link that you have there. Again, it's just a step-by-step guide on some of the issues and some of the considerations that have to be taken into account if a member is going to apply for federal disability insurance benefits. And so it's been in place for quite some time. It probably needs some updating, but it's still relevant. And so again, that's an important tool if a member is looking for assistance that they should be referred to in terms of proceeding with filing a disability claim. Okay, so that's providing assistance to members who may be encountering difficulties with their disability claims, either filing it or if they have to file an appeal. Now, in terms of recent developments, I want to talk about a couple cases. Okay, first of all, I want to talk about the Tallis decision and why that's important. Just a bit of background, Tallis was a teacher in Ontario. And if you're a teacher in Ontario and you reach age 65, you lose your extended health and extended dental care coverage, as well as disability insurance coverage and insurance coverage. Well, Tallis worked beyond the age of 65, but he wanted his extended healthcare coverage. His wife was actually suffering from cancer, and that was a very, very important benefit. But again, the policy was is once you start working past age 65, you lose your extended healthcare coverage. So what Talus did is he filed a charter challenge of the applicable legislation that indicated that insurance benefits cease at age 65. And sure enough, the Human Rights Tribunal, after reviewing that complaint and the charter challenge, agreed with Talus in the case of extended health and dental care that in fact discontinuing benefits at age 65 was in fact discriminatory and should be rectified. Now the problem in this context of this presentation is that Talus didn't even want disability insurance coverage after age 65, so he never challenged it. But the position of the PSAC is, well, if he was successful in challenging the governing legislation and regulations in regards to extended health care and dental benefits, it should equally apply to disability insurance benefits. And as I told you at the beginning, during when we were talking about the federal disability policy, federal disability benefits end at age 65. Currently in the federal public service, there's 6,000 employees in the federal public service that are working beyond the age 65. So what that means is that those employees have no disability insurance coverage. If they get disabled, all they're left with is either if they have sick leave, they can use their sick leave. And if they don't have sick leave, they can still apply for the 15 weeks of employment insurance benefits. That's all they're left with if they become disabled. So the PSAC is contemplating pursuing a charter challenge and a human rights complaint, perhaps a systemic complaint. We have a number of members who have filed a human rights complaint. And of course, it's all got bogged down with COVID-19. But when those cases get through, the PSAC is committed to moving forward with that and addressing the age 65 limitation under the federal disability insurance plan. So that's the importance of the Talus decision. The Fraser decision was a big victory for the PSAC. It was a Supreme Court of Canada decision. It involves pensions, but I'm going to explain the relevance here. And again, if you read the case, and I think the web links are going to be provided to you to the case, it was heard, the decision was released in October of 2020. The case was first heard by the Federal Court of Canada. It was trounced out. It was heard by the Federal Court of Appeal. It was trounced out. They got leave to appeal to the Supreme Court. The PSAC took intervener status on the case. And lo and behold, they were successful at the Supreme Court of Canada. It was a split decision, but nonetheless, it was successful. And and not only was it successful, it opened a whole Pandora's box about what it means in terms of discrimination on some of the prohibited grounds under the charter. And so the PSAC has taken this wide-ranging decision, and it's got the whole legal community in a scuffle about how they're actually going to deal with this. But with respect to the presentation I'm making today, it may have relevance in two particular instances. One is that we get occasions where members, they plateaued. They're not totally, well, they are totally disabled. They can't work more than say 15 or 20 hours a week. So 15 or 20 hours a week is less than 66 2/3. It still meets the commensurate definition of work. So they continue working beyond the 2-year periods, and that's okay. And Sun Life tops them up to 100% of salary. So that's fine. These employees are fine. They're getting 100% of salary. They're only working, say, 15, 20 hours a week because that's their medical capacity to work, but they're still getting the top up to 100%. But then the employer comes along to these employees and says, well, you know what? You're only working 20 hours a week. You shouldn't be a full-time employee. You should be a part-time employee at 20 hours a week. Now, in terms of income, it doesn't make any difference because this employee will get topped up, even though they're now a permanent employee at 20 or 15 hours a week, they're still going to get topped up to 100% of their pre-disability salary. So they're not disadvantaged in that respect. Where they are disadvantaged is that they no longer accrue pensionable service on a full-time rate. And so that eventually will affect their pension entitlements. And as I said, the Supreme Court of Canada decision in Fraser dealt with pension issues and discrimination issues related to pension. And this may be one area that may be vulnerable now to a charter challenge. The PSAC has already conceded the ground on this situation. The Renault decision is evidently the long-standing decision, the jurisprudence that prevails, and the employer has the right to do that. If you're only working part-time, the employee has the right to relegate you to part-time. But what we believe we can challenge is the fact that they no longer are able to accrue full-time pensionable service when they're retrograded or rescinded to part-time status. So that's one area. The second area, of course, is some of you may all be familiar that once you're off for 2 years, you get these famous option letters from the employer giving you a choice to wind up your employment, either through resignation, a medical retirement, a regular retirement. And if you don't do any of those three, they'll terminate you for cause. So employees, what they usually do is they take the path of least resistance, and based on jurisprudence, that's probably their best option. They pursue the medical retirement. Now, the problem with that, of course, is that they'll still get 70% of their salary. Sun Life will stop them up till 65, but their pensionable service is locked in to the amount they've accrued up to the termination of employment. And what happens is at age 65, you lose the Sun Life benefits, as we've talked about. And when you're 65, you don't want to start losing income at that age. And that's exactly what happens. The PSAC feels that practice, and again, the implications of that practice has on pensions is now vulnerable. We've lost. I've been fighting this battle, or PSAC has been fighting this battle for 25 years. We've actually gone backwards in terms of trying to represent members in this situation. Well, now we think we've got something to stand on with the Fraser decision. And again, the PSAC's hired legal counsel. We're looking into it, and perhaps we're going to pursue, again, another charter challenge on this practice of terminating the employment of disabled employees after 2 years under the directive on leave and special working arrangements. So I just thought I did highlight those two developments. They're very, very important, and keep your eye open for further developments on those. Okay, so those are recent developments that I thought I'd share with you. And now we're at my favorite point. I stopped talking. I'm tired of listening to myself talk, and now we can answer some questions from the audience, and I would look forward to that. Okay, then? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's great, James. Thank you very
Okay.
much for your presentation. I think
Okay, no problem at all. No problem at all.
Morgan's going to start off with the first set of questions.
Yeah, thanks so much, Nancy. Thank you, James, for the presentation. We were getting lots of positive feedback, as well as some really good questions throughout the presentation. So Nancy and I have sort of curated them. We're going to alternate asking questions. And just a reminder to participants that if your question doesn't get answered in the presentation, in the live Q&A, oh, we're seeing your screen, James.
Oh,
we're
okay.
seeing your emails
Sorry,
right now.
Okay, you see that?
Yes,
Yeah.
you're good.
Okay.
So you can send an email to the PSAC Kingston Regional Office if you have any specific questions that pertain to your circumstances that we can refer to James, or just if your questions aren't answered during the Q&A, we can also follow up with you. Okay, so the first question that we have is sort of a conglomeration of a few questions.
Okay.
It was, how long does the application process take? And if the appeal is denied, there were some questions around a 2-year limitation period.
Okay.
The member asked if it's been 2 years since the initial demand, can it be outright denied by Sun Life at that point? And if that's the case, should a lawyer be consulted, or should members consult with a union rep prior to filing a lawsuit?
Okay, those are good questions. Okay, first of all, how long does the long-term disability application process take? Well, again, this is a policy between Sun Life Financial and Treasury Board. The PSAC doesn't have any role in the negotiation of the policy or the plan. Now, the agreement between Treasury Board and Sun Life, they have service standards. And one of the service standards is that Sun Life is supposed to provide a decision on a claim within 10 business days of receiving all the required documentation. I don't think I've ever seen them meet those standards. And there's no penalties for meeting that standard. So that's the standard. My experience is if you file the claim, Sun Life gets all the required information, you may get a decision within, say, 15 working days or 20 working days. So you should plan for that. If you're making a filing an application, that's the sort of time period. And that's if everything's in order. So they should render an initial decision within that time frame. Sometimes it's longer, sometimes it's shorter, but usually within that time frame, say 20 working days, 22 working days, something to that extent. Now, the same would apply to an appeal. So your claim is denied. You have to gather additional medical information. You file it. Again, it's the same service standard. They're supposed to render a decision on that appeal within 10 working days of receiving the updated medical. Again, they never meet that standard. We've got no possibilities for, requiring them to meet that. There's no penalties for not meeting that standard. So they usually don't meet it. Again, we're looking at, maybe 15, 20 working days from the date of the appeal. Okay, so those are basically the time frames. Again, it takes longer. Sometimes they refer the file to a medical consultant, and that takes, a week to 10 days. They refer to a specialist that's on strength, on retainer with Sun Life. They review the file, they give it back to the disability claims manager, and they give the disability claim managers the medical breakdown of the file and what they believe, whether it's payable or not. So again, it's not hard and fast. I just gave you what the service standards are. They're never respected. So, what difference does that make? But that's my experience over the years as a disability insurance officer. Now, the second question is this 2-year limitation that they're talking about. And what that is, and it's mentioned in every letter. Well, it's mentioned in every letter, the statute of limitations based in your province. So you're right, in the province of Ontario, I believe it's 2 years from the date of initial denial. So what that means is from the date of the initial denial, technically, you have 2 years from that date to initiate a lawsuit or a statement of claim against the insurer. If you're outside that that period, you're statute barred. Supposedly that's the legislation, but our experience, and we've got this on record with the insurer, is no. That limitation period does not start until you've exhausted every avenue of appeal under the disability insurance plan. And that would include an appeal to the independent disability insurance plan board of management. We've got the insurer telling us that's the start date of the eliminations period. So Sun Life will tell you it's 2 years. In Ontario, that's what it is. It's 2 years from the date of the initial decline. What I'm telling you is what the insurer has told us under Group Policy 12500, that 2-year period doesn't start until you've gone through all the procedures, including a denial at the independent disability insurance plan board of management. Okay, so hopefully that answers the question. That was a good question.
Okay, great. Thanks, James. The next question is, why do we not receive information with the disability package that someone in the union is available to us for help?
Okay. Well, okay, that means that would beg the question about who would you think would be available to help yourself? Like, all PSAC members are represented by component unions. They all have either labor relations officers or service officers who should have some understanding of the disability insurance application process and the disability insurance appeals process. In cases where you're in areas that perhaps are serviced by a regional office, many of the regional officers are updated or knowledgeable about the disability claims and disability insurance application process. Now, if you're talking about, reaching the national office, like I'll tell you right now, I'm the only disability insurance officer in the national office, and we have 140,000 members, or not 140,000, 160,000 members that are covered by the disability insurance plan. So, I mean, my name, and I believe, Nancy, you said you're going to distribute my name to the attendees here. It's available out there. But like I say, I can't handle all those claims. So we have other officers and component unions and regional offices. Now, you may not know who they are, and that's a problem, and that's a problem that should be addressed. But like I say, these people, if you knew who they are, you should be able to get assistance from them in terms of filing a claim. And not only that, if you're going to get assistance, you want assistance for someone as close to you as possible. You don't want to have to wait and go through the mill to get to me, and already you've lost time in terms of being without income and being disabled. So you want to have that information and that assistance as close to the ground floor as possible. And again, that would be members, I would say members in the component unions or members in the regional office who have an understanding of the disability insurance application and appeal process. So hopefully that answers the member's question. I think that's what they were getting at.
Great, thanks, James. So we had a number of questions about the 13-week designation for sick leave. So why it's 13 weeks, there was an indication that not many members have 13 weeks of sick leave. And following up with that, there was a question of when you should actually apply for disability for the DI benefits in that process.
Yes, okay, that's a good question. And I put on a screen again the definition of elimination period for everybody to see. Okay, why is it 13 weeks? Well, that's an interesting story, but I'm not going to go back. It's a historical story. The 13 weeks, the reason they've done that is, first of all, because there's a public program out there. So if you don't have, as I said, enough sick leave to carry it forward for that 13 weeks, well, there's the employment insurance sickness benefit system that bridges you during that 13 weeks. It's 15 weeks of benefits available under the employment insurance sickness benefits if you have enough hours. And someone correct me, but it's only 600 hours in the previous year. If you work that, you're eligible for employment insurance sickness benefits. It pays 55% of earnings up to a maximum of $595 a week. The reason that 13 weeks is again, it keeps the cost of the disability insurance plan down, and there's already a public program to bridge that gap. So as you say, many members, in fact, I would say the majority of members do not have 13 weeks of sick leave credit. So they're going to fall short of that 13 weeks. And what bridges the gap is a public program that's out there to try and bridge that gap. So that's the reason for the elimination period and why it, and the reason why it's 13 weeks, from what I understand, is that currently employment insurance sickness benefits pays 15 weeks of employment insurance sickness benefits. Again, this policy, if it hasn't been changed in what I said, 50 years, well, back at the beginning of the disability insurance policy, I believe EI sick benefits were only payable for 13 weeks. So that's why there's that bit of an overlap or discrepancy between 15 and 13 weeks. The other question is, when should you file a disability claim? And that's another good question. And the basic rule that I go by is, if you believe, you file a disability claim if you believe you're going to be disabled beyond the elimination period. So if you've got a cold, or if you've got, some sort of minor ailment, you're not going to file a disability claim because you're going to recover before the 13 weeks. So there's no sense in filing a disability claim. That's not going to get you anywhere. Again, what you would do is, when you think, and you should know either with consultation with your attending, if you're going to be off work beyond that elimination period, that's the date that you should file a claim. You don't want to wait too long, because again, if your sick leave expires and you don't have access to or your employment insurance sickness benefits expire, you don't have any income until Sun Life renders a decision. And believe me, if there's anything more disparaging in life of becoming totally disabled, it's becoming totally disabled, not having an income. And I have dealt with many of those members, and they're stressed out to the max. So you don't want to be in that situation. So you don't want to wait too long, but then again, you don't want to apply if you have significant sick leave. For example, people have maybe a year sick leave. Well, you're not going to file it, in 13 weeks, at the beginning of 13 weeks, because because that information is not going to be relevant. Sun Life is only going to assess you for paying the claims beyond that initial year. So those are things to be considered in terms of the timing. And again, I say the basic rule is if you think you're going to be off beyond the expiry of your elimination period, that's when you file the claim.
Okay, thank you, James. One of the questions that's come through is why has this plan never gone to tender?
Yeah, okay. Again, that's a good question. And I'll try to address it as precisely as possible. First of all, it has nothing to do with the PSAC. The PSAC's talked about, this plan probably should be put to public tender, and there should be substantial revisions made to the plan. It's way outdated. That's part of the problem with all our members. All the problems our member occur. Like I say, just take a look at the policy. When you get the chance, it looks like some ancient document, archaic language, it's unbelievable. So you're right. It hasn't been put to tender. Now, some of you may know the public service healthcare plan that pays your, your physiotherapy and your eyeglasses and your prescription drugs and all that. That's been put to tender many times, and it's changed hands between insurers, and that's not a problem. The problem with the disability insurance plan is once you become disabled and Sun Life sets up reserves for you, if we moved to another insurer, say we move to Industrial Lines or we move to Canada Life, some of the other big insurers or MetLife out there, if we move to one of those insurers, well, your claim stays with Sun Life. It doesn't move over, not like the extended healthcare plan. I mean, you get your prescriptions drug paid one day by which Sun Life right now, but if they change hands to Canada Life, well, they'll pay the prescription drug. It's no problem. It is a problem with disability insurance benefits because of the reserves. That's a big issue with the federal government, and there's $2 billion in reserves. $2 billion in reserves, and so that's a whole issue about the Sun Life would retain those reserves. And that's an issue for the federal government. If they want to get out of it, they have to do something about those reserves. They could leave it to Sun Life. And believe me, if they left it to Sun Life, based on my experience, boy, you think those people have a problem now getting their claims approved? You wait till they're no longer subject to any purview by the union or the federal government. And they're just out there with those reserves. And all they're trying to do is get at those reserves. And the way they do is to cut people off their claim. So that's the problem. That's the problem. It's not so easy to put the plan to tender. I mean, I've seen disability plans put to tender. Well, again, I don't want to get into it, but we've had members in the National Arts Center, members in the Yukon Territory, members in the territory of Nunavut. They've all opted out of the federal disability plan. Okay, so they've gone to different insurers. And believe me, they've regretted it ever since that date. So that's another factor to take into consideration. But the point the member asked is, why is this never intended? That's the answer I have. It may not be satisfactory, but that's the answer to that question.
Thank you, James. So there's been a few questions about the age 65 cutoff. So one is around if you're still an employee after the age of 65, are you still paying in to the benefits? And the other is whether, and maybe more largely, whether your pension is ultimately affected if you're on disability insurance benefits.
Okay, good question. First of all, the first question, no. Actually, when you reach the age of 64 and 9 months, you should stop paying premiums into the disability insurance plan. And hopefully anybody who's of that age or older that age, their premiums have stopped. But with Phoenix, you never know. So you probably might still be paying, and you're not going to be paying for any benefits because you're not going to get any benefits. So no, you don't pay premiums And the reason it's 64 and 9 months, of course, is that you never be able to collect benefits with the elimination period. So that's when premiums stop at age 64 with 9 months. And then benefits, if they're payable, they stop at age 65. The second question was, oh, geez, can you run it by me again? The second question was, the pensionable service. Okay, when you're in receipt of federal disability benefits, you're on what's called leave without pay due to illness or injury. And when you're on leave without pay due to illness or injury, you're accruing pensionable service at the single rate. Okay, so if you're on leave without pay due to illness or injury, you become disabled, you return to work. Then when you return to work, you can repay those leave without pay deficiencies that you've accrued over a period of equal twice the length of leave you've been on with no interest or mortality charges. So it's an interest-free loan to pay those accrued leave without pay deficiencies while you're in receipt of disability insurance benefits. So that's your status under the pension plan when you're receiving disability insurance benefits. You're on leave without pay due to illness or injury, you're accruing pensionable service, premium arrears, and you will repay those arrears when you either return to work or when you retire over twice the length of time that you've been off on leave with no interest or mortality charges. That's the arrangement.
Okay, thank you, James. There's a couple of questions in regards to assistance with members. Are there common mistakes that members make when they apply for LTD that may delay their claims?
Okay, well, again, one of the mistakes that's often made, okay, this is in terms of application. In terms of application, one of the mistakes that's often made is, again, the timing of the filing. You know, they wait, like they know they've got sick leave. Say they've got 3 months sick leave. Well, they wait till the end of the 3 months sick leave, then they file a claim, and all of a sudden they find out that, you know, they've used their sick leave, and Sun Life's off adjudicating a claim and taking their time, and they're perhaps without income, or if they are, they're on employment insurance sickness benefits, which represents a significant drop in income. So that's one of the first problems. The other problem, and I'll just go into a bit of detail on this. You recall that I mentioned that the purpose of disability insurance plan is for non-work related illnesses or injuries. Well, a lot of members, when they file their applications, the reason they're off, and they're stressed out, but they indicate the reason they're off is because of workplace stress or because of some, you know, overzealous supervisor, and that's making a problem for them, and that's what's causing their stress, and therefore they should be they're off and they want to claim disability insurance benefits. Well, again, Sun Life will look at that claim and say, you know what, this is not a disability claim, this is a workplace issue, and there are other avenues to address that workplace issue, and so that, you know, that becomes a problem. So if you're going to file a claim, many people, you know, because of workplace stress, they become to a point endogenously where they are disabled. But you can't say, you know, well, I could maybe work somewhere else, you know, if it wasn't for this, again, this overzealous manager. Don't say that, because if you do, your claim's not going anywhere. So those are the two common areas in terms of applying. In terms of appealing or going forward, the most common problem, again, and maybe it relates to attending physician, is this 2-year transition. You know, they'll have an elaborate medical report from, you know, that they paid $250 for, you know, from either a specialist or attending physician, and you're beyond the 2-year point, and the document says, yeah, so such and such a claimant cannot do his own job. He can't do that job. There's no way he can do it. Well, Sun Life is going to say, that doesn't matter. You know, we know he can't do that job. He or she can't do that job. That doesn't matter. It's commensurate occupation. So that's one of the problems in terms of moving in that area. One of the common problems, and that's why you have to understand the criteria of totally disabled.
All right, thank you so much, James. Just being mindful of time, we're really close to 8:30, which is the
okay, that's fine.
scheduled
That's fine.
time for the webinar.
I can address them.
Yeah, so if your question was not answered during the live Q&A, and we've either indicated that we'll follow up with you, or have indicated that it might be best for you to follow up with us regarding specific circumstances or individual questions. But we will have a report of the question and answers. So
Yes.
we will follow up with James and get back to members after the event. And just a reminder that the recording of the event is going to be posted on the PSAC Ontario YouTube page. And as well, you were provided the presentation materials as well as the cases that James referred to in an email from Kelly prior to the event. So with that, I think we'll wrap up. Do you have any final words, James?
Well, okay, just Morgan, and I believe my contact coordinates are also going to be issued to the people who are on the are participating in the seminar. Is that correct? My contact.
Yep. So your, I believe your email was on the presentation slide that got sent out.
Okay,
But
great,
if you are looking to get in touch with James and you can't find his information online, you can always reach out to myself, to Nancy, or to the Kingston Regional Office. And we are happy to direct and refer your questions.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Okay, no, that's it. That's it. Thank you very much for everybody for attending and taking time out to get information on this most important topic.
Great. Thank you so much, James. We really, really appreciate you taking the time to present and for sharing all of your expertise on this matter. So with that,
myself.
All right. Thank you so much. Have a great night, folks.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Night.